Here are all the Minecraft facts that you'll wish you knew sooner, starting with,
plenty of players in Minecraft want minimap markers. I mean, that's definitely the reason it's in every Minecraft mod pack I've ever seen. But a feature that passed most people by is that by right-clicking on a banner, you're able to add it onto the map and show exactly where it is, which can create some really interesting and detailed maps if you want, especially when zoomed out. Better yet, throw a name on that banner, and then as soon as you right-click on it, you'll actually see that custom name on the map. So if you're trying to find home, you don't have to wonder where it is. Just look on it and, oh, there it is, home.
When barrels got added into Minecraft, they were kind of a status quo change. I mean, for so long, if you wanted to store your items, you had to do it in something that looked like this. But luckily for us, barrels look like a full block, meaning we can hide them in some pretty clever ways. And my personal favorite might just have to be putting an upside down barrel in between your floorboards. As you can see with these examples, we can tuck these away in some pretty inconspicuous places like underneath the bed or some other chests, and boom, you just can't even notice it. I mean, if you want a flush way to incorporate these into your build, you're gonna be able to do such. Instead of using boats, why not use dolphins? Crazy as it sounds, if you get a dolphin onto a lead, you can enjoy the dolphin's grace buff for however long your journey is. And to get even more out of this trick, try wearing some Death Strata 3 boots to give you that extra speed right across the 7 seas. Because with just those two things, we can start to travel over 36 blocks per second. Just like that, you travel 2 chunks every second that passes by. That's some serious speed. Don't just use the new crafter block for crafting. I know that seems confusing, but actually what you're going to want to try to use it for is a password system like this. So as we can see from this example, every time that we input which slot not to put an item inside of the crafter, that gives off a redstone output that we're able to track. Though with the way that we're able to track the redstone signal that's coming out of this block with a comparator, what's actually happening is that you can press any 4 buttons inside of this and it'll still work. Which doesn't give us necessarily a password system, but it does give us a cool way to enter your base. And for me, that looks a lot better than a lever. I'm willing to work with it. Using blocks like stairs in your paths can be a great tool to use, but when you start to mix in bottom slabs as well, that's where the issue starts to arise. Since anyone that's trying to walk over these is just going to be stopped by this annoying slump that happens in your block. So even though you're able to walk up this seamlessly, it's still not the greatest feeling to have to bob up and down while you're going over your path. So to help those weary travelers feel a little bit more steady, it's better to get the same kind of depth by using cobblestone stairs instead of a cobblestone slab.
Magma blocks sound like a real force to be reckoned with, but as it turns out, they've got one crucial flaw. For all the fear that the name gives off, as it turns out, if you step onto a magma block and then just hit the shift key, all of a sudden, you're immune to damage. For some reason, all it takes is getting into a squat formation to save yourself from burning. Who knew? And honestly, I'm kinda sad that the same doesn't work in lava. Really, every time I see this, I think it's a bug, but sure enough, until it gets patched out, it's a feature, ladies and gentlemen. And it's one that I think you should definitely take advantage of.
Now, Beacon's a tough block to get. Not only do you need to kill the wither, but you also need glass and obsidian, which are 2 blocks that you don't want to punch with your fist. But when you put them together into a beacon, then no matter if you're using a pickaxe or not, you're able to break that just the same, which always looked so weird to me. I would have thought that at least the obsidian would mean that we need a diamond pick. But no, we're able to break this any which way that we want. Though for me, the way that I want might still be with a pickaxe. It just looks safer. While raiding the new trial chambers that we're finding in this update, how do you tell which mobs are going to spawn from a different trial spawner? Well, I guess the easy answer would be wait until they start spawning, but you can actually go against that. Since by looking at the floor design, you can see in this helpful graphic from Reddit, each one of these spawners has a different 4 blocks that are put into the base. And once you know how to look out for these, and particularly look out for the ones that are going to be in trouble, it can really help you out in a pinch.
Having a conduit in your ocean is a big flex, so having several of them should make for a big showcase. But after you spent all that time rounding up the prismarine hearts of the sea, it begs the question, do you know the best way to use them? Well, as it turns out, there is a right answer. See, since these conduits give out their effects in such a pattern, the most efficient way to get the full effects wherever you go is by placing the circles in an overlapping fashion like so. And this chart from Block Facts really clears that up. And that'll help you feel like a proper Atlantean anywhere throughout your base. Here's how to make your spyglass even better. Since the way that the spyglass works, it actually modifies your existing FOV. So while we could use our regular FOV and have it zoom in this much, if we lower that FOV to the bottom at 30, then you'll notice when we use the spyglass, it zooms in even closer. And then if you've got an additional zoom mod on top of that, you can really use this trick to get up close and personal, and then immediately switch off the lower FOV, because playing the rest of the game this way is miserable. Minecraft's fluid dynamics don't make a lot of sense, and nowhere is that more apparent than when it comes to farmland. See, the way it's coded is that water will hydrate any farmland with a 9x9 grid like so, but that works regardless of what block is in between them, meaning that your crops can hydrate even through thin air. And if you ask me, that's just absurd. But sure enough, it does work. So if you're looking to make a farm on your skyblock, I guess this is something to consider. But other than that, it just seems pointless. Most of of the time, locking a chest in Minecraft is a luxury that only creative map makers have. That is, until you add our furry friends into the equation. By having your cat sit on top of a chest, it is impossible to open up the thing. And what's even better is that you can kinda hide this system by having a piston push a non-solid block on top of the chest. That way, if your friend's trying to open up your chest to steal your valuables, at least your feline companion's gonna keep it safe. They're not exactly ferocious lions by appearance, but sure enough, they still can do the job just alright. So you go over to craft yourself a new set of iron tools. But in your hubris, you accidentally make a second pickaxe, so you put it in the furnace. Except regardless of the state that the pickaxe is in, you'll always get 1 nugget back in return. That seems pretty cheap. And instead, it might make sense that the amount of nuggets that you get from smelting an item is based off the item's quality. Because you can't tell me that all of that iron just smelts down into 1 single nugget. It's just not possible. Finding Minecraft details can be a tricky process, and sometimes the real secrets don't come from the game itself. For instance, take the Iron Golem. Now, in-game, I always figured this red pixel functioned as the pupil. But no, all it takes is one look at the official 2019 Valentine's Day post from Mojang's Instagram to see that the red part is actually the Golem's sclera. So does that mean that this is canon? Well, I guess I don't know. After all, there was the famous Bluestone incident from the Village and Pillage trailer, so maybe promotional art isn't always to be trusted. But if I had to bet on my assumption versus the artist's rendition, I'd pick the official every time.
Minecraft's nether portals will never be the same again, since now it's possible to use an ender pearl to teleport yourself through a nether portal by right-clicking it, which could give you one of the fastest ways to escape if you need to get out of the nether on a pinch.
Fishing in Minecraft has long been overpowered, so much so that Mojang decided to nerf the treasure loot tables back in 1.16 for most of the fish farms. However, even the nerfed version of fish farming is still pretty overpowered. You see, if you were to take a random water bucket from anywhere in the world, be it a jungle, the ocean, or even a rain-filled cauldron, and then you place that water source wherever you'd like, you can still fish infinite cod and salmon out of that one block. I'm not complaining, but it is a bit strange. While the invisibility potion effect makes you almost entirely invisible to different mobs and players, as it turns out, there's something in Minecraft a little bit more all-knowing. As you can see, if you have the invisibility effect and then you walk up to an enchanting table, then it'll still open up and the book will see the player. Even though Minecraft is a sandbox, that doesn't stop the game from having unspoken rules. And if you ask me, some of those are just bizarre. Take this ladder for example. Now if we make a pathland underneath the wall and then place a ladder, you can see it works just fine. Though if we place the ladder above the grass and then try to make it into a path block, it's a no-go. And why that order exists, I've got no clue. And if you really need to keep your allays from dying, then your real get-out-of-jail-free card here is that if you give your allay a totem of undying, then they can use it just like we would. And there you go. You take them from hardcore mode right back into regular survival. Or if the allay's not the only mob they want to keep safe, then with the fox as well, you can do the same. But unfortunately, they're a little bit tougher to get the totem too, since for the fox, you need to throw the totem onto the ground for it to be picked up. But once they have it, it doesn't matter what kind of polar bear gets nearby. They'll be left unscathed, and you'll have a very confused polar bear as well.
While you're down in those trial chambers, you should remember to bring yourself an axe. And not just for fighting mobs, because actually a sword would be better for the PvE with the sweeping edge. And the reason is that if you bring down an axe, you're able to use that to strip off the oxidation off the copper bulbs down there and get extra light inside of the trial chambers. Even if it's a cheap axe, it's gonna do the job in both cases.
Building a timer with redstone is possible, but costly. But this solves that, since by using even less redstone and even more of a big brain play, we instead use cobwebs in an item to fall slowly through the cobwebs and then drop onto the pressure plate. And there you go, by the time it reaches the bottom, you'll have roughly a minute and 10 seconds passed. So considering that other 1-minute timers look like this, I think it's more than worth it to give this one a shot, especially when it's this simple to set up.
With the ability to now ride minecarts through nether portals, we're able to make it so that you can board your nether travel system in the overworld and end up on the other side on another overworld track. Which, even though it isn't as fast as riding an iceboat highway through the nether, it literally requires no input from us. Just get into the minecart and that's it. You can be hands-off eating chips if you want. And to me, that sounds like a much more enjoyable ride. I mean, as long as you pick good chips.
Fences are a staple in a Minecraft build, so we're all pretty familiar with their limitations. That said, it makes sense that not us nor any other mob can jump over the fence block. I mean, it would make a pretty lousy wall if it could. But while you can't jump over a fence or a wall by itself, if you add a carpet on top, making the whole thing taller, then you can clear the jump. Don't get me wrong, I like using these wall and carpet combos in my builds, but do I understand them? Not so
much.
On the second floor, we've got a beautiful hot tub, but on the ground floor, you're not gonna like it as much. Since the ugly truth is that only having a 1 block thick floor underneath a water or lava feature means that all we're gonna see from the bottom floor is a bunch of particles dripping down from the ceiling. I'd rather just make the floor too thick and not have to worry about it.
There's a cool detail found inside the igloos. Now, you might have noticed that the windows in igloos being made of ice, and ice melts at light levels higher than 11, so the redstone torch inside actually wouldn't do anything. But if we were to move in and turn on the furnace, then that ice would melt and the water would sweep away the carpet, revealing the secret trapdoor leading underground, meaning that if you didn't know the secret, there would actually still be a natural way of discovering it.
If you don't yet have the mending enchantment, you'll want to pay attention to this, because when you take those non-enchanted items and mix them together like this, it's not just the 2 durabilities that add up, but rather that repaired item will have the sum of the 2 items durability plus an additional bonus of 5%. And hey, you did all of that without consuming any XP, which I again think is pretty useful. So if you're getting a lot of armor drops from your mob farm, this could be a good way to bring them back up to usefulness. Since even if these 2 items wouldn't add up to a full durability item, with that 5% repair bonus, it goes right up to clean and pristine, all of which without ever having to touch an anvil. If you have trouble fighting mobs at night, then you might want to brew up some weakness potions. Since surprisingly so, these can render a lot of mobs completely useless. And you'll see as much if we use it on a zombie. They will still do their attack animation, however, you don't even receive a damage tick or a knockback when they do it. And folks, that's on hard difficulties. And it's not just zombies either. This will happen for slimes, spiders, and even silverfish. And perhaps my favorite yet, if you use a weakness potion on a cave spider, that'll prevent it from poisoning you too, which really makes these ankle biters seem a lot less intimidating when you use it like that.
In the past, we used to use TNT for our player cannons, but ever since 1.21, we're now able to follow after Michael 23B's design and make one of the easiest player cannons using wind charges. As we can see in this example, in almost no time, they travel nearly 60 blocks just to land perfectly at the top and take no fall damage from it. I mean, with TNT player cannons, sure, you can reduce the amount of damage that you take with things like blast protection, but even then, there's some damage sustained. But because of the way that wind charges work, there's absolutely none sustained here. And with redstone that's so simple you could learn how to do it from just a screenshot, there's no reason not to build this in your next base.
The carpets in Minecraft leave a lot to be desired. I mean, when you look at them, they're all one single color. It can kind of get old quick. So if you're trying to find a better rug for your house, then actually putting together maps and item frames is a pretty cool thing to walk on. For one, it gives you a lot more of a design to work with, especially since with this, you can add so many minute details that are just not possible with the standard variant. But really, what we're going for here is the illusion. If you ask me, it sells it pretty well. And it'll definitely impress some of your guests when they walk through and see that brand new welcome mat right on the floor for them.
At this point, you probably know that fishing rods can pull a lot more than just fish. I mean, it's a pretty fun pastime to be able to hook your friends and then just pull them around with one of these. But it's not just mobs that we're able to attach to our fishing rod, since there are also entities that we can do this to as well. And that includes weird blocks like prime TNT, anvils, and even the sparks that come out of the shulkers. And perhaps my favorite that we're able to do from this is to hook different blocks while they're falling entities. And so if you drop off the dragon egg from a high enough height, you can challenge your friends to have to grab it onto their side and play the weirdest game of Hungry Hungry Hippos yet.
One of the key properties of Minecraft's water is that this stuff gets everywhere, and examples like this show as much. So to stop that, we usually use signs like so to cut off the source, which works for sure, but it's a bit obtrusive, to say the least. So to keep it simple and out of sight, glow lichen is a solid pick. See, besides just lighting up your stuff, this organism is good for blocking flowing water, letting us walk into our water base without a problem, or a distracting piece of wood on the side. And if you ask me, that's the best of both worlds, even if it's not the intended use. Stratters don't like to be cold, and that raises an unfortunate problem for us, since if we want them to be happy, we need to incorporate some kind of fire hazard into our builds, and that's not ideal, to say the least. But go figure, moss carpet is the proper solution. Since this carpet doesn't burn, we can use it as a protective layer for our lava, and the Stratters will be happy and warm just the same, which I'll say makes it a lot less stressful to mount one of these, and it gives us quite the pleasant compromise. If you're playing on peaceful mode, keep this one in mind, since the truth is that you're going overkill if you're putting respiration 3 on your helmet, since in this difficulty, putting any level of respiration on your helmet will mean that you cannot drown. And the reason for this is that the peaceful mode regeneration rate is enough to actually keep up with the drowning damage that you take when you have respiration. So don't waste your levels trying to go overkill on this. Ever wondered how much damage you deal to a mob? Well, surely some of you must, because there's so many mods out there that exist to show you a mob's health bar. But really, you can see this within the game as well, because when you attack a mob and they display the heart particles, if you actually took the time to count those, you notice that they're not just for show. They actually display the exact amount of damage that you dealt to the mob. Now granted, they show up pretty quick and they sometimes overlap, but sure enough, if you deal 5 hearts of damage, you're gonna see 5 hearts pop up above that mob's head, which is a pretty cool effect, but even knowing this, I doubt I'm ever gonna take the time to count it. I'll know how much damage I've dealt to a mob when they die. If it's not enough to kill them, then it's not enough for me.
Did you know Mojang have gone on record with the names of both the Ender Dragon and the Wither? Yeah, Minecraft lore is hidden everywhere. And during an Ask Mojang, Quinn Richter, the head of the Minecraft marketplace, said the name of the Ender Dragon was Jean. He then, very seriously might I add, stated the Wither's name as Simmons. And while I wanted to ask why Mojang's bosses were named after a British actress from the 1950s, Jeb still won't answer my emails.
Item frames are great, but you should be cautious, because when you're decorating with these, it gets very easy to have too many, and then it starts to bog down your performance. I mean, keep in mind, these are counted as entities within the code, so every item frame that you're placing down to the game, that's basically as if you're placing down a whole bunch of new mobs. And considering how small these are, that's an easy fact to forget. I mean, this small eating area uses 16 item frames alone, so picture how many item frames you're using to line your whole storage system. You get the point. And honestly, I take that as a reason to use these as sparingly as possible, but that might just mean that whenever you do choose to use them, it'll be even more special. Skulk sensors are very useful, but they're also very noticeable. But if you want to keep their function while losing that fidelity, then it's worth noting that by waterlogging a skulk sensor, then they'll be silent, but still behave normally. Now granted, this doesn't make them entirely discreet since the sound waves are still visible, but as we can verify from the Minecraft subtitles, there's no sound that's given off from the skulk sensor itself when we do this. But when you're trying to use a skulk sensor for a hidden trap like this, then anything you can do to make it less noticeable is gonna go a long way. After all, it just takes one little detail for them to notice and the whole operation to go belly up. And for the price of a water bucket, I'd rather stack those odds in our favor. Here's how to smelt your logs into charcoal without ever needing a furnace. Since if you were to go into a crafting table and put those 3 logs towards a campfire, then once you place down that campfire and break it, you'll be left with anywhere from 2 to 4 pieces of charcoal. And sure, it does take 1 piece of charcoal to get the whole thing rolling, but it's hard to say this isn't a whole lot faster. And once you've done this trick once, you'll have enough charcoal left over to keep doing it again and again. Now, it's commonplace knowledge by this point, you don't place a bed in the nether. I mean, that's just intentional game design. But then it might be a surprise to see this not explode in the end. See, what's happening here is that in Bedrock, it's actually possible to disable this intentional feature through a hidden command. And now in 1.18, we can keep our beds safe by changing the game rule respawn blocks explode to false. And then whether we're interacting with the bed in the nether or respawn anchoring the overworld, neither will explode anymore. And even though we still can't sleep in them even with this changed, at least the villagers can. When you come across an igloo, you're not really seeing many villagers. However, they're still classified as a village. And so if you were to have the bad omen effect and then start to climb down the hatch inside of an igloo, you could actually start a raid, which is a pretty raw deal for you and that villager that's stuck down there. I mean, having to be trapped next to a zombie villager is bad enough, but then to know that all you have to look forward to when you escape from that prison is a whole bunch of pillagers up top, yeah, I can't say I'd be excited about leaving either. Here's how to use one oozing potion to disable all mobs spawning around you. The way we do this is going to seem pretty strange and maybe a little barbaric, but by first applying the oozing potion to 4 snow golems in a pen like this, then when we kill them, we're going to be able to get even more slime spawning from them. Split them down into their smaller slime counterparts, and then we'll quickly get up to the 16 cave mobs that'll disable all cave mobs spawning locally around you. Since on Bedrock Edition, the amount of cave mobs that are able to be spawned locally is much lower than what we're used to on Java. You can even then use name tags to make sure they don't despawn. That doesn't remove them from the mob cap, and you'll no longer have any cave mobs spawning around your base. Pretty good for just a single potion and a couple of snowballs.
If you're like me, you love the soul speed enchantment, but the look of soul soil just really isn't doing it for your base. In that case, no worries, because even if you put carpet down or slabs on top of the other block, you're still able to get the full effect of soul speed, meaning you can run around with style and speed without having to look at all the brown inky black in the floor, to use the technical term, proving that this might just be the way to get the full mileage out of the enchantment without having to give up your floor's facade.
The Ender Dragon is a destructive boss. Truly, unless the block is native to the end, the odds are that it's getting destroyed. And while it makes sense that the dragon could break down your cobblestone tower, why are Ender chests on that list? After all, they're made of obsidian, so the logic would figure these are pretty safe. But as you can see when we put these next to the dragon, that's just not true. But hey, at least if she breaks this chest, your items are still well and good up in the cloud. The way that it's coated, leather armor keeps you from freezing in powdered snow. But that's a broader statement than than you might think, since really any amount of leather armor is enough to do the job. So by just having leather boots, you're no longer going to freeze on the entire rest of your body, even when fully submerged in the powdered snow. And at that point, it seems like a bit much. I get wearing these moccasins to be able to walk on top of the powdered snow, but to keep you completely safe in the snowy peaks, that might be pushing it. Especially when mobs that drop leather aren't safe by themselves inside of the powdered snow. And it just seems like Mojang picking favorites.
Never buy this from a villager, because even though the Woodland Mansion Explorer map might sound like a useful item to get, it could be a ripoff. Since as a result of the world generation, there could be times that you buy this map for the cartographer, but the Explorer map doesn't actually show where the structure does exist, but rather where it would have existed if the generation didn't mess up. And really, it's not that useful to get a map that tells me where a Woodland Mansion would have been when I was really hoping to find where one actually is. I think I'd rather just use my eyes for this.
When the 1.14 update rolled around, Mojang added in a chunk of different workstations. But now there were a few updates past that, it turns out the fletching table is still the only table that doesn't have a purpose. I mean, you can use it to employ the villagers, so I guess they can use it, but we can't. I don't know why we don't make the new potion variants of arrows in this actual block. And that seems like a weird missed opportunity, at least until Mojang or the community can figure out what the heck this is supposed to do. While logs and leaf blocks might seem pretty primitive, they're actually fully capable of transmitting redstone signals. You see, when you have a leaf block, it has a tag in its data that remembers just how far away it is from the nearest log. And while this is meant to determine when the leaves should decay, it actually still exists when the leaves are placed by the player. And when that distance tag gets updated, it can actually get detected by an observer. By adding a log into the proximity of leaves in an area, you can send a wave effect of redstone transmitting through observers and leaves. And if you got a love for the technical side of Minecraft, then you can definitely see how this could be applied. For the building community, copper is one of the most exciting blocks that's been added in a while. But with all those different weathered and oxidized variants, it begs the question, what's the best way to get them? Well, thanks to this user, this format seems to be the solution. Here, we not only get a space-efficient layout, but we also get to see something that holds up to the mechanics. Because, you see, copper oxidizes faster with a 4-block gap in between, so this takes that into account for the best solution. And as soon as you have the landmarks set for where to place each block, this should be a big help for getting that Statue of Liberty up and running. If you need to quickly get rid of some fire in the nether, then a good way to do that is by brewing up a couple of splash water bottles. Since these not only extinguish ourselves when we catch on fire, but they can also clear this plus sign shape out of the fire that catches on the ground. So if you need to make sure that your items don't burn, it might help to throw down one of these. That way, even if you burn alive, at least your stuff won't. I don't know about you, but sea pickles don't get a lot of use in my Minecraft world. That is, until I found out that they're surprisingly helpful with storage of all things. By placing 2 waterlogged pickles into your item stream, you're able to redirect the flow of items for sorting without running into issues like bottlenecking. That means these things are extremely useful for storing items into hoppers that come from 2 different opposite water streams. And since the flow of the system doesn't disrupt, you can still get the good speed that comes from one of these machines. So even though I have no clue how this got figured out, it's still going to do wonders for your item sorting system.
Parrots might seem like a cute mob, but they have a dark secret. And that secret is that, much like actual parrots, they're able to imitate different sounds. And unfortunately for you, if you were to keep a parrot as a pet, you might notice that they're able to imitate the sounds of hostile mobs. So that time that you heard a creeper when you were in the jungle and you couldn't find one around, that might have been the reason for it. But while that sounds like a downside, it actually could be an upside if you know what to look out for. Since by keeping a parrot on hand, then it'll start to imitate sounds of mobs that you might not have seen yet. So basically giving you an alert system for when there's hostiles nearby. Granted, the subtitles feature can also do this, but this is a lot cuter. So I'm inclined to use this if I can.
If you're building your mob farm without an armor stand, then you're doing it wrong. Since strange as it may sound, having an armor stand set up like this in the middle of your mob farm makes it so that when you use a sweeping edge sword, you don't have to worry about wasting one of your swings on a dying mob. Since anytime that you attack a mob with sweeping edge and it dies on the spot, then it just absorbs the attack without doing anything else. But attacking an armor stand alleviates this, and that gives us the best option for crowd control. And it also means that if you're swiping at the armor stand, you're not going to take any thorns damage from any mobs that happen to spawn with it. So if all it costs is a training dummy to help you deal with these other dummies, then that's something I'm willing to take.
Minecraft 121 added in automatic crafting, and now automatic mining. Since now what'll happen is that any time that an entity of any type comes through the end portal, it'll break the blocks and drop them as items on top of that obsidian platform. And folks, it's pretty
ridiculous how well this works. I mean, you could even place down deep slate diamond ore, and it'll break it as if it was broken using a pickaxe. And at this point, if we can automate both the mining and the crafting, who even needs us anymore?
Anyone who's ever had to mess around with a bunch of different dyed blocks knows the pain of this one. Because as much as we'd want to, we're not able to actually re-dye different dyed blocks. I've had way too many times where I've gone over to a crafting table, wanted to take my old dyed blocks and turn them into something I can actually use. But no, I'm not able to do that. And as someone who likes to mess around with a bunch of color in my bases, I would definitely love to see this get changed around in a future update.
Usually, we change the color of beacon beams by using full glass blocks, which does work, but it's too expensive. Or rather, it's gonna look expensive when you compare it to this. See, by using colorful glass panes, we can get the same effect. And considering we get 16 glass panes per 6 glass blocks, it gives us 16 opportunities to change the color of your beacon instead of the 6 that we just had. And plus, you can even hide those stained glass panes inside of the beacon beam, which I'd argue looks even better than the original option, meaning that in more ways than one, this should be the way that you're dyeing your beacons going forward. With the new armadillos that spawned from the Armored Paws update, we've now got a new terror for our spiders. And as many technical Minecraft players have been quick to point out, as long as we make sure that the armadillos aren't getting rolled up, then they'll be able to scare the spiders off the walls of your mob farm, which, as anyone who's ever had to build one of these mob farms know, is a real jamming point. And so while it might be hard to get an armadillo over there in the first place, it turns out that having a few of these will just make it a lot easier for your farm's returns. Every time that an item goes through the end portal or the end portal gateways inside of the end, it'll now load the chunks on the other side, which what's so important about that is that we now have an automatic way to keep our farms going inside of the end. In the overworld, we use this to keep our farms running even if they're not at spawn, and now we're able to do the same inside of the other dimension. And with how much open space there is in the end, if you really wanted to, you could build some pretty cool farms here as well. I would just make sure that no endermen come by and steal any blocks from it.
With another update in 1.16, we got something of a counterpart to cobblestone. Here we could use blackstone as a substitute for crafting stone tools, furnaces, and even brewing stands. Which is nice, but it's not a complete replacement. For some reason, unlike cobblestone, blackstone can't be used to craft pistons or certain pieces of redstone equipment. Which, I get it, the nether isn't exactly the place to do redstone machinery, but I also don't get only doing half the assignment. So why not give blackstone the proper welcome to the crafting side? Now, if you've ever been outside in a winter wonderland, then you definitely know that snow is pretty good at falling from the sky. That is, unless you put it in a layer, in which case, I guess it's never gonna fall at all. Now, this is another case where Java Edition is actually different to the Bedrock counterpart. You see there, snow layers actually do fall when they're affected by gravity. And when you see how it works there, it makes sense. And it would look a whole lot nicer than just floating snow in the sky. Trust me. When Minecraft added in the new stone blocks, it added so much more variety to our builds. And I've personally gotten a lot of use out of andesite since it got added in. But for some reason, I never seem to have enough after a mining trip. So luckily, if you also run into that problem, it's actually possible to craft andesite using diorite and cobblestone. Now, I didn't know this until recently, but sure enough, if you put them into the crafting grid, you're able to get some fresh andesite out of those 2 other blocks. And I guess that means you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I'm still personally not a fan of diorite. So for its case, I'm glad it has a use now. Anyone who's ever got stuck in a cobweb knows that these things are an absolute pain to go through. And not just for us, but for most entities in the game. Except, of course, projectiles. Yeah, for some reason, arrows and such are able to go through these things without fail. But I guess if you look at the bright side, it does make cave spiders a lot easier to take out with a bow and arrow. And for that part, I'm thankful, even if the logic and reasoning isn't there.
Here are 50 ways to use TNT. From spawners to fireworks to the American flag, it's all here. But we'll start first with the safer option for TNT. If you were to take a TNT and then drop an anvil right on top like so, it'll stay on top of it while it's in block form, but as soon as I light it off, it actually goes inside of the entity and prevents any explosion damage on the blocks around it. Look at it, even the crops are fine. But if we get down some entities, whatever I'm feeling dubious for, let's get a couple of pigs or something. TNT, anvil on top, light it off. Only damages the pigs, but none of the blocks. So it looks like a giant thing full of TNT, but the truth is that there's actually more complex mechanics on the inside of this. We've got skulk sensors that are on every side of this. So then we can't do anything to this. Anything I try to do to disarm this, including placing water on top, doesn't really keep anything safe. It doesn't even reach the ground fast enough to disable the TNT down there. That's embarrassing. So given how destructive TNT is, this one's gonna seem a little strange. We could actually use TNT as a pretty good scaffolding block. TNT is instant break with your fist and survival. So if I'm going and planting myself up here, it's not exactly the safest tower. I wouldn't want this next to my duplex, but if I need to get rid of it, instantly breaks. In a way, it's kind of like slime blocks or honey blocks, except those would actually cushion your fall, and they're not gonna accidentally blow up your house if you set it off wrong. So one of the ways that this could actually be useful too is if you were trying to fill up something like water. So if I was trying to instantly drain something, this gives me a way of placing down all these blocks and then removing them instantaneously. I'm not doing it in the best way right now. It's all gonna fill back in, but that could very well get rid of the water sources, which makes TNT a lot more useful in water than it's ever been. A TNT build hack. As you can see from far away, the bands on the TNT start to look like the stripes of the flag. And then adding glow like in here, we get the stars, giving us the old stars and stripes American flag. Credit to It Think I'm Your Mom for this one. Yeah, that seems fitting. I guess if you wanted to, you could add pale signs to the front and make it a little less obvious. And then if you control click on that, control middle click, then you can copy it all without the data. And then, you know, if you need to go and set off for 4th of July, you have a fun surprise in mind. Oh, that's a little high. I don't think our reset button's covering that one. Here we've got a diagonal build hack, which by attaching leads to these chickens here that we're keeping cooped up in the trap door. Oh, not that one. Sorry, buddy. Enjoy your freedom. But by attaching that all here, we get the strings of the bow. I love putting in the TNT minecart for the bullet there. I think that's very fun. This reminds me of something I would see in Clash of Clans, the giant X bow. That's cool. By mixing together our TNT with red candles, we get the perfect thing to set up little sticks of dynamite. And I love the unlit wick. Looks like the tip of where you would light the dynamite. That's very fun. I mean, obviously you could go and set these off. They're not going to be nearly as destructive, but that can be fun too. And when you see these side by side, it really does match well with the little bits of TNT dynamite that we're seeing packed here. A good way to decorate your next mine shaft. That ties well with our next one, which is using TNT for terraforming. So what we've got here might just look like an odd shaped cave, but it's actually how big TNT will clear around it. So if we watch it explode, we get this great radius that we can clear away to carve caves and canyons into our builds. I mean, using TNT to clear out blocks is already a popular concept, so using it to clear out blocks that you're not hoping to collect anyway works pretty well. So because TNT is predictable in this way, we always know just how much stone we're clearing out with each explosion, giving us 21 blocks whenever we do it. So if you want to calculate how you get rid of your mountain, that's a good start. This is gonna be a little unfortunate for our scarecrow, but we can use commands to make our bow into a TNT arrow cannon. So as soon as I flick this switch, because of this command down here, it'll summon prime TNT at any one of the arrows that I shoot off. So if I'm not a fan of this iron golem, I wasn't expecting all of those to lick TNT. That's awesome. Look at that. Oh, it's a chain reaction now. Oh, all the arrows are still exploding. Oops. But I love this, getting to see where you're shooting your arrow in this way. That's very satisfying. Another bit of command-based fun that we can have is the TNT spawner. Now, the idea here is that we're gonna have a mob spawner that actually summons in primed TNT. Look at it, you can even see it in the center there. I wasn't expecting that. It just won't last for very long. The spawner is explodable itself, so we're not seeing it very far past childbirth is what I'm saying. We're gonna be going down into the deep dark because TNT down here is actually pretty good as a warden distraction, because all of this is going to be a lot of noise that we can set off to keep it aggro on these vibrations instead of towards us. Plus, you also clear away some of the skulk while you're at it, giving you a solid thing of XP as well. Let's see if I can avoid the warden this way. Oh yeah, so when you're placing it next to the skulk sensors and catalysts as you're going, then you're getting rid of all of it, making it safer as you're ultimately making it a little more dangerous in the short term. And the skulk sensors give off redstone, so when we walk past these, they'll even explode with it. It also makes the worst sounding ancient city. I'm actually very shocked by this one. I've stayed quite safe through this whole thing. Oh, maybe not, maybe not. There's one like crawling through the ground there. Oh, and it was my own hand that did me in. But that was pretty impressive. You could always use TNT for deep dark removal. Yeah, just a couple things of scaffolding, as we like to call it, placed down, and then get a start. Especially if you perch yourself up above here, you're not gonna have a lot of problems while you're dropping it down below. And the deep slate has high blast resistance, so you're not really getting rid of all that either. Really, you're just terraforming away all the ugly skulk. Here we've got ourselves a Bomberman minigame. You ready for this one, Observer? Teleport ourselves in. We've got ourselves a maze here, and then by walking through, we can go and plant TNT on any of these blocks and try to kill each other off. All right, I'll take the pink bed this time. Then with some Depth Strider boots, we've got waterlogged redstone down here. So then we're not actually exploding any of the blocks, we're just exploding each other. This will make it so that we can walk through easily, and then we can get the start on it. And then you can even add in cobwebs to slow people down, making it much like the original minigame. To me, this feels like the kind of minigame that Stampy would have built in his lovely world. Survival friendly, and, you know, just not survival for long. If I go and build up a pillar in the middle of the nether, where there's a whole bunch of zombie piglins around me, I can go and anger up all these guys, drop down my TNT block, and get a whole bunch of player kills. And because I'm doing player kills, I'm gonna get a whole bunch of better loot and XP too. It is a little precarious, but it's hard to say it doesn't keep you safe. Look at how many of them I already got rid of. And then I can go climb down here and collect all my spoils. Just keep in mind that because it is a player kill, if there's any left standing, they are gonna be mad at you. On to another mini game, a classic TNT run. We have a bed of pressure plates on top of gravel on top of TNT, giving us a whole set of basically a destructing platform. You ready to get started on it, Observer? Go. That'll do it. So if you go in the diagonal, you can really set off a whole bunch of these, and then you basically try to spleef your friends, or spleef yourself. I recommend doing it over an ocean so you're not just destroying a metropolitan area when you're playing this. Glass is an annoying tool to break, and the reason for that is that there's no proper tool that you can use to efficiently break glass. You can't use a pickaxe, you can't use a shovel, you can't use a hoe, nothing. So, a way to get rid of it all quickly, if you don't care about getting any of it back, is with TNT. I mean, also, what better to throw in a glass house than just a whole bunch of exploding stone? And just like that, I've easily cleared off all these blocks with minimal collateral damage. What we've got here isn't to get rid of the glass, but instead get rid of the gravel. Since if we have a gravelly flats mountain like so, then with just one block of TNT, we could set off a whole chain reaction to watch. Check this out, Observer. So I plant down my one precarious TNT, and that'll start this whole thing of falling. Look at it go. We're getting a nice little chain reaction here. Oh, we can do better than that. There we go. Oh, I love watching it pool in from the center there. I thought there was just a creeper head block. No, there was a creeper just submerged up to its neck in gravel. But what you gotta keep in mind is that if the gravel's pretty thick, if the TNT doesn't reach the bottom, it actually won't set it off. Oh. That's a good little PC test there. Just making sure my frames are still intact. Yeah, watch it all chase with you as you're loading the chunks. That's fun. TNT can make a great way to harvest all of your animals quickly. So if we get them bobbing up and down in a sort of water system like so, then I could use this scaffolding block right here, light it off, and just like that, 100% collection from all of my beef. I mean, there's not a lot of cows to breed up again, but if you're breeding them up top in some kind of breeding chamber, then you could drop them down and easily get all of the spoils. So one thing that Observer pointed out is that if I were to hold a flame bow in my offhand and a looting 3 sword in my main hand, then I could use this to get responsibility for the player kill and get looting applied to all these mob drops. Let's check this out. And sure enough, I got almost half a stack more than I would have just regularly, plus a whole lot more leather. And much in the same way that we use the responsibility for us killing the mobs to get the looting applied, we can use that for other mobs too. Now, what I mean by this is that if I were to summon in a whole bunch of creepers down there, and then get the setup of a skeleton shooting towards an iron golem, then if that skeleton is shooting its arrow through the lava and it hits that TNT block, there we go, if I intercept it right there, that gives the skeleton credit for all those creeper kills, giving me a whole bunch of music discs. Oh my god, look at that. All of this in only one, oh, I got a couple of strats. Okay, good, that's my favorite one. And if you don't want to have the iron golem here, then you can always just have the skeleton shoot at you too. We're gonna see this process again, but in a different context, since if I were to take the same setup and swap it out from a skeleton to a drowned with a trident, then when I get a whole bunch of these villagers down here, drop that on down, kills all of these into immediate zombie villagers. Well, you should be in hard difficulty for this to be 100%, but once you are, we got ourselves all the zombie villagers that we could use for a zombie villager mob switch. We're gonna be using the help of automatic crafting with the crafter block to give ourselves automatic TNT dispensing. So what we've got here is a whole bunch of mine carts that are automatically crafting up with our TNT to give ourselves TNT mine carts that instantly detonate. Normal TNT would have to be primed and everything to drop off, and while this isn't TNT duplication, duplication, it's gonna feel like it. Especially since these won't have the issue of exploding midair, so you don't have to go and move it down like you would with a regular kind of TNT duplication machine. These will only explode when they hit the bottom. Look at how far it drops. Usually we would have had the TNT machine stop working by this point, but it keeps going. We're gonna use TNT for an auto mining chamber. So what we have is a machine that'll automatically detonate TNT whenever we've pushed enough concrete or blocks into it. So you could have this with a stone generator, you could have this with a wood farm, and as soon as it reaches towards the bottom here, it'll get exploded by the falling TNT, which, might I add, we use a honey block here so that we're basically cooking the bomb. We're removing a lot of its fuse time up here, so then it will explode midair and give us all of the stuff flowing down into that obsidian chamber, an auto mining farm. And the credit for this would go to, as they say, Mr. B or Mr. Bazooki. Lately, TNT has become a popular thing to go and collect sand when you're out in the desert. And the reason for this might not just be because we're using the sand to create more TNT, but also look at how much sand we get from a singular TNT block. Over a stack and a half just right there. So if I were to go and chain these all up, it's 100% collection. And as long as you have the gunpowder figured out, you're getting yourself a whole lot of sand without having to go and waste your time with a whole bunch of efficiency 5 shoveling. Well, as Etho says, anyone who mines sand normally is a sucker. And if it's good enough for Etho, probably good enough for me. And from the sand of the forest, we can use the TNT to get rid of our trees. I'm not sure where this falls conservationally, but for this conversation, it works pretty well to get yourself a whole bunch of logs in the forest. So if you don't have yourself an automatic tree farm, this could do a lot of the trick for you. It's also just really satisfying placing down TNT in a forest. I don't know what Smokey Bear's take on this is, but for me, it works just fine. So if we first create ourselves a shadow platform so that we're actually in the right brightness, then once you darken it up, we're gonna be able to place down our mushroom shelf and explode our way to a whole bunch of brown mushrooms. I love using it as an umbrella like this. And one thing worth noting is that if you don't have a lot of obsidian, waterlogged leaves also do the trick. Plus they look pretty fun too. And as long as the mushrooms don't mind you setting up camp above, you can get a whole lot of brown mushrooms just for a whole little bit of work. Over into the nether, we're gonna be using TNT for netherite mining, since it's a little bit easier to control than beds, which is a funny statement to say, but if you can go and set up a whole column of TNT for yourself to go through, then you could very easily chain react that through, and it'll leave any netherite scrap that you find down here completely intact. So the ancient debris is easy to find this way. And what I like to do is that I just go and mine myself a tunnel like so. Then all I have to do is just walk back through it, placing TNT, and then you could easily light it off and start the chain reaction to expose a whole bunch of the tunnel and see if you got lucky. Anything? Hey, we found some. Well, we're gonna get a lot faster at finding this because we're gonna go back and show you a TNT nether bore. So funnily enough, using ancient debris, we can push that with a piston and give ourselves the proper tunnel bore to go and find even more ancient debris. Since we can't normally push obsidian with a piston, but ancient debris is still explosion proof, but can be pushed, giving us a way to build a TNT duper up top that we can then push our TNT on top of and use it to carve the way for our tunnel bore. And this design's tileable too. You can build a whole bunch of these in a row and have it all clearing out scores of the nether just for you to get your ancient debris. And credit to the master miner for making this masterful mining design. Much like we did with the deep dark, we can just go and set a path of this TNT up top like so, and then dropping it down. All these big caves that generate since the Caves and Cliffs update are now going to be ours to explore easily. So if you find yourself in a situation where there's a whole bunch of mobs below us, we can just easily take our TNT and drop it on top and clear them out instantaneously. So if you can start with a ledge, then just any amount of TNT that you want to place down, preferably not double thick so then you're not exactly having it drop on top and explode towards you. But that'll give us a way to find some new ores that expose below and have a lot less mobs that are giving us problems when we go down and mine them. If you find yourself stuck in a pillager outpost, we can take a page out of Neeb's Gaming's booth and do the same like we did for the zombified piglins and drop some TNT on top. So long, suckers! Observer, a cinematic shot, if you will. Fantastic. So if you were playing something like Bed Wars, where you need to launch yourself over to the other team, place down my TNT, let it ignite. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Now, it is a little bit more practical in a mode where you're taking decreased damage from regular TNT, but it's still pretty fun. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh no. Still landed it. Minecart PvP. We could use minecarts with TNT to do basically the same. By placing down a rail first, my minecart with TNT, and then shooting off a quick thing with my bow, that flame bow is going to immediately detonate, giving us an instant kill. Look at that. 127 points of damage right on an observer's skull. Or block. I don't really know your anatomy. So the pro method for doing this, and we'll show it by slowing down time, is that if you were to shoot out an arrow, so while the arrow is mid-air, oh, he got it! He got it! And he got himself in the process. Man, nothing like watching your own death in slow motion, huh? So TNT for a speedrun strat is that a lot of speedrunners will take the TNT that they're getting from something like a buried treasure, and then use that as the way that they collect different blocks. And a great place for that is the village. Since with a properly placed TNT block, you could really get rid of a lot of parts of the house. Just make sure you're using something like a lever to set this off. Since otherwise, igniting it directly is gonna get the iron golem mad at you if it kills any of the villagers. I'm trying to get a sub-hour. Here we go. About a whole bunch of dirt, miscellaneous blocks. Can help out quite a bit, especially if you're not going and spending all your time taking down trees. So you're probably not thinking of using TNT when you're going into the ocean, but here's a way to make it all possible. Since if we were to take a TNT block, much like we put an anvil on top, drop a sand block in instead, it now thinks that it's inside of an air block and it lets it explode as if it wasn't water. And the great thing about this is that this works even if I have mining fatigue. So if I'm swimming around regularly here, I'm not gonna have any issues getting into the ocean monument. I usually couldn't break this all, but place down my TNT, my sand. And if you know where the Elder Guardians are, you could even go and explode the 3 locations to give yourself an easy way to clear out all of the mining fatigue even when you have the effect. So underwater TNT isn't just a Bedrock Education Edition feature only. It's possible in vanilla too. So what we've got here is a TNT fireworks machine. And we're gonna see such when I set it all off. This one's not only pretty loud, but it's also pretty destructive. But look at how it all spreads out like that. So just by setting it off at different intervals, we can have the TNT turn all of its TNT siblings into a beautiful fireworks display. But now what we've got is the noise machine prank. You don't see anything out of the ordinary just yet, but if I was to go into free cam, you'll notice that we have an occasional randomizer that sets off TNT into a controlled space of water. So there's never any damage done, but it is going to be particularly scary when you keep hearing TNT go off in your base. And the reason that we have an observer here with a sapling that'll never grow is that this sapling, every time that it tries to grow, will give off a random bit of redstone that we detect with the observer, giving us a random signal for whenever this will go off. So the TNT gets set off there. You might see a couple of explosion particles, but nothing actually happened to my friend's house. And from that onto a proper anxiety machine, what we have here is the thing that was popular on Reddit for a while, which is a machine that might look like it's gonna set off this TNT block, but check this out. It pushes at just the right interval that it actually never gets it to properly ignite, because while it's moving here, it isn't actually a block, it's a block entity. So it can't update even if it looks like there's constantly power that's brushing up against it. And the way that you do this is just having observers all line up like so. You can build it just by looking at it. I can even go and walk in the fray. And the reason that we have this string of redstone down underneath here is that we have to turn on 2 of these pistons at the same time. Otherwise, you turn on just one and it would have exploded either way. What we've got ourselves here is the Enderman anxiety experiment, which is that if we get a couple of Endermen down here holding TNT blocks, then eventually they'll place down one of their TNT blocks, who knows who it's gonna be, and they're on this bed of redstone where, hey, Opa, fantastic, thank you, sir. And you can turn your whole world into a Phoenix SC video. It's the mob cannon. We could set it off with a whole bunch of mobs that have slow falling on them and launch them off. Wow, that was way more forceful than I thought it would be. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you just load up the mobs yourself, and then what we have here is a whole bunch of TNT being dispersed into flowing water that pushes it all this way. So in the original video by Professor TNT, credit to them, they mentioned using blazes as a way of giving yourself a substantial amount of survival offense. Wow. Could you imagine if you just had a bunch of blazes dropping in from the sky on you? Oh yeah, I didn't even realize that you set it off, and then I just see a bunch of fireball barrages dropping in. Oh no, it's just invisible, slow falling death. That's amazing. What we have here is a door made using only TNT. So I equipped the piece of armor that sets off the lectern with the skulk sensor, gives ourselves the TNT. which explodes my door, and because of a cobblestone generator, that door will replenish over time. And there we go, the cobblestone generator puts everything back into place. So it's literally just waterlogged leaves down here that work with all this lava down here to give ourselves enough cobblestone to push in, and the TNT output comes from this lectern, which is level 5. Amazing. It's just an innocent diamond block. I don't know how anyone could ever be mad at this, but the reason for it is that because you can have TNT look like any block while it explodes, we could have technically any block be exploding. Check this out. So the way that this all works is because of command like here, where we change the block state for a TNT that's summoned to look like any block that we so want. So if I wanted a particularly explosive observer, then I could do just that. And it even blinks like so. That's got to be eerie to watch, isn't it? So what we have here is a button that'll summon in a TNT, but this TNT is particularly odd because it's set to the max fuse, giving ourselves a 14-hour-long bomb. And there's no way for us to clear this entity necessarily, so we're just gonna have to leave it be. Yeah, pull up a chair and sit down, observer. It's gonna take a little bit to explode, which is long enough where most players would probably just forget about it, but it will still go off in the server's lifetime. So if I saw this, I'd be wanting to design a kind of pool that it could drop into. Luckily, we have one designed. There we go. Out of sight, out of mind. And speaking of crazy TNT, we've got this one for the Mega TNT, which is that we can change the explosion power of TNT by modifying the summon command. So what we've got here is a TNT with the explosion power of 128. First of all, this gives you a good way to examine how the explosion power radiates in such a way. It's very strange scan lines. That begs the question though, will it explode obsidian? No, the bed trap. Whenever it becomes night and someone sleeps inside of this bed, that'll send off the input to turn their safest place in the base into the worst night of their life. As soon as they go down here and sleep, that's a real rude awakening. Here we've got a design by Joseph Espindola, which Observer has modified to give ourselves the TNT arrow cannon. So much like how we've killed the Ender Dragon using TNT arrows before, we can use a bunch of TNT to turn the arrows from this dispenser into high-powered missiles. And these villagers will show us off. I hope you all enjoy your day out, because you're out of days after this one. Wow, it even launched them off that way. The reason this all happens is that arrows do damage based off of velocity. So when they're getting sped up in such a way, all these TNT is turning them into high-powered missiles that can instantly rip through anything. So if I were to take my super bow like so and shoot down all my arrows, with all the TNT explosion damage that we're doing here, that'll stack with my power 5 and piercing, giving us the Warden Ender. Amazing. And that's not the last we're going to be seeing of our arrows, since if I were to set up a whole bunch of arrows that were inside of this, such as by shooting down a whole bunch of these splashing arrows like so, and then much like we've launched entities in the past, those were all going to shoot up a dangerously beautiful fountain. Wow, look at that. I even got myself in the process there. This here is a flying machine that when it reaches an immovable object will explode. First of all, this is an extra fast flying machine. So using this old design from Cube Hamster, it still works plenty well on new updates. And as soon as it reaches our target, it'll have traveled a long distance and explode like so. It pushes the redstone block that was powering it into place, and the missile does its trick. Yeah, for no TNT minecarts, that does a lot of damage. All right, so we got a platform of levers. What's gonna happen? I'm gonna take the first stab, that one. And then you and your friend will compete to see who's unlucky enough to get exploded. Oh, I guess both of us are is the answer. Maybe step back as soon as your friend's made the mistake. So we can get the cross section here and you can see just how little there is with TNT, but whoever gets unlucky will be the one who dies. Round 2. Okay, this is like Minesweeper. Oh no! It's just like Minesweeper, and that I'm bad at it. So we've used TNT cannons to launch ourselves in the past. That's nothing new. But what we're gonna be using here is a design by Observer to launch ourselves with a whole bunch of wind charges. So we're taking a normal TNT cannon that you would have built, and by using wind charges, we spray it all out like so. So all this is a bunch of wind charges down here that will take all of these TNT that prime on top and spray and pray, giving ourselves basically a shotgun and a machine gun in one. That's awesome. And worth noting is that the reason that we're pushing in this observer for the observer clock using a piston is that actually makes it faster than placing it by itself, giving us even more TNT coming out of our dispensers and even more to be shot off with the cannon. And still not going to be nearly as effective as the major TNT finale, the TNT nuke. So what we have here on display is a design made by the Savage Teddy that with the help of just a little bit of redstone, we put those into place to prime it up, and then these will spray out the rest, giving ourselves the TNT dome. Wow. There was a village here once. So all that's happening is that we're just having these down here as the accelerant to shoot it off. And then we've got actually our bullets here from the top rope. Yeah, if you do this one first, then it'll detonate the whole thing without any propellant. And all you're gonna do is just turn yourself into a massive mistake. Here's everything you can do in Minecraft as a shapeshifter. Have you ever wondered what life is like for the Wither? Well, using the identity mod, you can see for yourself. And becoming a Wither will make you much taller and give you a ton of health. But what's funny about this is that we actually can't fly around without attaching an elytra, making us more like the Wither in its melee phase. And this way you can scare away the whole server from their loot so you can switch back to normal and steal their stuff with ease. This is the closest we're ever gonna get to having Spider-Man in Minecraft, since by becoming a cave spider you can have some secretly good powers, with the main one being that you're now able to climb up walls, which will let you easily escape caves or chase down your friends that are building away from you, both of which are made even easier by the fact that the cave spider can move even quicker than us. I guess the more legs the better. But we don't just have to become hostile mobs with the identity mod, we can also make our friends happy with a rainbow sheep. And the way that we do this is by unlocking every color of sheep and then quickly switching between them, meaning there's no need to get yourself a name tag to change your name over to Jeb. But there are a couple downsides to this trick, like the fact that sheep have very little health and an awkward hitbox. And what's worse, that wolf that you were friends with is now going to be trying to eat you if you get too close. By transforming into a dolphin, you can explore the ocean in a brand new way, since with this morph you can swim around the water insanely fast, which will allow you to quickly sneak through shipwrecks and find every piece of treasure down there without breaking a sweat. Though once you do become a dolphin though, you will have to commit to that aquatic lifestyle, since as it is, you're no longer able to stay on the surface. Go up top and try it out. After a few seconds, you're gonna have to jump back into the lake to get your breath back. Here's what happens when you transform into a blaze. Now first off, you become a walking flamethrower, since you can shoot fireballs with the click of a button and do it as many times as you can, as quickly as you can, with no cooldown, making you particularly dangerous. And while I wouldn't recommend that you go near water, fire or lava will be completely harmless to you. And since we're a hostile mob, that'll also keep us safe from all other hostile mobs as well, making it surprisingly safe to be a being made out of pure fire. In the past, we talked about dressing up as a creeper to prank your friends, and now we're going to be doing it as the actual creeper. Since with this mod, we could transform into the creeper and then go around using our explosive powers to destroy everything that we see, especially because those explosions that we set off don't even kill us. Or if you're not that destructive, then you can simply hide in your friend's house and wait for them to get back from their mining trip until you give them the fright of their life. Stop attacking things with your fist, since as the frog morph, you can now attack and break blocks using only your tongue. And now we'll be able to jump 3 blocks tall as compared to our normal 1.15. And we can also swim without needing to come back up for air, since they're going to be amphibians. And while we aren't necessarily safe from hostile mobs or other players, with the ability to jump around like this, there's a reason frogs are a slippery target to catch. Ghast might be one of the most powerful mobs you can transform into, as you have all the abilities of the Ghast, including flight, which makes you practically invincible to all the other mobs. I mean, only the skeletons have bows. It's gonna be pretty hard to reach you. But the biggest drawback is gonna be the size of the Ghast. And considering we very rarely have that much of an open floor plan to escape with, that'll force you to stay out in the open. The mob with the best chance to defeat the Wither in Minecraft is actually the cow, since by becoming a cow with the identity mod, it'll give you the ability to instantly remove any potion effects. And that's because of the magical powers of the cow's milk in the game, apparently. So whether you're fighting a Wither or you want to get rid of any effect that your friends throw onto you, say you're levitating in the end dimension thanks to shulkers, then just become a cow and you'll be just fine. Life as an evoker is one of the most fun experiences you can have in Minecraft, since by giving us 12 hearts of health, that already makes it a lot better than being a human. But then having the ability to deal tons of damage to our enemies makes it a perfect combination for any raid that you have coming up. And better yet, you get to use the evoker's abilities all to yourself, which will help us make sure that any players trying to get a Totem of Undying out of us are gonna keep their distance. Although they come from the same place, the Endermen and the Endermites both are very different. And if you manage to unlock these morphs in the identity mod, you'll be able to see so for yourself. But the Endermite can only teleport similar to how a chorus fruit works. But with the Enderman, you control exactly where you teleport, just as if you're using unlimited Ender Pearls. And plus, these Endermen have a lot more health, and they're just plain out cooler looking. And with the ability to pick up any block that you want, you control your friends by making them think that an Enderman's stealing their entire house. The best start to a fresh Minecraft world is always finding a village close to spawn, and then hunting down the Iron Golem before it's able to attack us. But now the shoe is on the other foot, and by morphing into the Iron Golem, you can now go toe-to-toe with them, with our hits also doing an insane amount of damage. I mean, just like this, you could basically two-hit any mob or player. And unlike the regular Iron Golems, we aren't going to back down from any creeper challenges. Parrots are the happiest mob in Minecraft. Not only can you become a parrot, but you can also dance like one. Just by loading a music disc into a jukebox near you, you can cue that up to now dance in Minecraft. And now I'm just picturing the idea of opening up a parrot-only club in Minecraft and playing some of the best music in town. It's Strat. It's always Strat. Strat's the best disc in the game. By becoming a piglin and going into a bastion, you're able to raid the whole thing, with the piglin brutes being none the wiser. Now, don't be alarmed, the piglins will start sounding angry, usually because they heard the chest open at your footsteps, but then they'll quickly switch between charging at you and remaining peaceful. I mean, I can't blame them. If I saw someone else on my shift opening up one of the chests and stealing our loot, I'd be pretty confused. But luckily for us, we can take all the netherite that we want and escape completely unscathed. It's almost impossible to tell the difference between an alive shulker and the shulker box used for storage, which makes the shulker the champion of hide and seek. And so if you become a shulker by unlocking into the identity mod, you can easily hide in your friend's base next to the rest of their storage and scare them when they're not expecting it. Or if you want to, just loot the other shulker boxes and keep it inside of your inventory, making you still a shulker box, but one that only we can use. Fighting a witch is a gamble. You're either gonna kill it and maybe get a regeneration potion, or you get blasted in the face with poison, weakness, harming, and even slowness. But by becoming a witch with the mod, we now get ourselves that exact ability. But just like when you're fighting a witch, you can't decide which potion you're gonna throw out. Though if you fall into lava, maybe quickly switch over to the witch morph, and then you can hope that you drink a fire resistance potion, and that way we'll end up safe enough to escape the lava. You can now become the most powerful mob in the game with the identity mod. And now, as the warden, you obviously deal a lot of damage, but you can also use the sonic shriek attack. But be careful, because where you're aiming that, it's gonna be pretty tough, considering the drawback with the warden is that you're not able to see very far in any direction. But don't worry, because while you might be blind, as soon as you're playing as the warden, it's hard for anyone to think that they can stand up against you. Playing as a snow golem in Minecraft is like living the game in ultra hardcore difficulty. And for obvious reasons, you can't enter into any biome that isn't cold without dying. And not only we're stuck to those ice biomes, but our only attack that we can use is a simple snowball throw, which barely does any damage. And while you'd be better off using anything, even a wooden sword, that's not going to be an option when the snow golem has no hands for you to hold anything anyways. Shapeshifting into the Ender Dragon isn't as great as it sounds, since while you will be able to fly, it's not as fast as an Elytra, so don't expect to win any races. And I don't think you'll be caving anytime soon, since it's impossible to fit anywhere because of the giant's great size of the hitbox. And while you can shoot your dragon breath at enemies, it's hard to control. So although it's definitely a flex to become the biggest boss in Minecraft, I wouldn't say it's the most fun to play. How confused would you be if an armor stand suddenly came to life and attacked you? Well, you can give your friends that experience by becoming the armor stand morph in the identity mod. Just break away any armor stands that your friend might have in their home, and then stand there instead with your morph. And the best part is that you can wear any of the armor that you had there before, and it'll look like it's still in the armor stand. And the fact that there's no animations for this makes it look like you can be completely still until it's finally your time to strike. Who would have thought an armor stand would be better than the Ender Dragon? What happens if you were to track down the giant zombie and then kill it? Well, using this mod, that now allows us to become the giant zombie ourselves. And while it's over 10 times the size of any regular zombie, it only has double the health with only 20 hearts. But the plus side is that you can kill almost anything if your big arms can get close enough to hit it. And we can even hold our tools and weapons in hand as well. So if you have a cool trim on your netherite armor, you can get up to size to make sure that everyone in the entire zip code's gonna be able to see it. If you ever wanted to be a phantom, yeah, me neither. But if you shapeshift into a phantom, it's a truly evil way to mess with your friends. I mean, there's a reason why phantoms are agreed to be one of the most annoying mobs that Mojang's ever added. So imagine if we could harness that ourselves, flying above your friend's base, swooping in, and then seeing them react to trying to defeat a fully armored phantom. They're not going to stand a chance, and I really don't think this will do much to help phantoms be any more likable. The Ravager is obviously one of the most powerful mobs you can morph into. And you might think that the Ravager is just a bigger version of the Iron Golem, which would make navigation a lot harder, about it, the Ravager's attack can actually push mobs away, just like you had yourself a knockback sword. What's weird about this version though is that the Ravager's attack will always push the mobs to the south. It's not exactly clear why, it's making this battle into more of a civil war, but whether it's a bug in the code or there's something to the north that the Ravagers really don't want you to see, it's still useful to get them away. You might think playing as a fish would be hilariously dumb, and to that, you'd be exactly right. But did you ever think about just how small the fish can get? Because playing as the cod can let you just slip into spaces under half a block size like so. Just make sure your hidden base is underwater, because with only 2 hearts to your name and the ability to not breathe on land, you're not going to be hiding anything above ground very easily.
And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?